Well, ever since they were little, I make them
last month.
work with me out there and plant stuff, and and then they own it a little bit in their hearts and their heads, and then they can't wait to eat it.
It's corrected.
That's what's while they're watching it grow. And I even told them too. I said, this is part of my evil secret plan.
Your style, I like that.
To make you like vegetables.
I see it showing up a little bit more.
But it worked.
Every once in a while, people wear the bow tie.
It worked.
Dressing up for the last one.
I have mine at home, but I haven't had a chance to wear them and stuff,
Okay, I think it's close enough for a minute, I think, within a minute, so I'm gonna go and call meeting to order, and everybody that is here, we're gonna start with our agenda review by Jeremy.
Good evening. So, on the agenda today, we have 4 items just for the evening. Police Commission bylaws. What that is there was a decision made a couple of years ago to have the chair go to single-year terms instead of biannual terms, and they would be limited to 3. About the same time, we made the decision to go from a annual report and plan to a biennial report and plan. So the two no longer or didn't line up, and we just kind of did a flip. So if we're going to discuss whether or not we want to make any changes to that, it would make sense to do that before a new chair is elected. So after that, we have the Civil Disturbances Policy 801 review. That was the last item on our work plan that we did not get to. And we have the Eugene Police Commission officer elections, as well as the farewell to Commissioners Miller and Manning. So
I vote no on that.
There are a couple of announcements that I have today. One is regarding a date. June 22nd is a big day for the Police Commission. 2 things are happening at Harris Hall for City Council. One of them is the Commission Annual Report and Work Plan that Commissioners Walker and Miller will be presenting. There is also the appointment of the new commissioners by City Council. That will happen later that evening. It is being posted in the Friday Weekly if anybody's interested in the times for those, or you can just talk to me later and I'll get you that. Also, Councilor Surratt wanted me to let everybody know she wasn't going to be able to make it this evening, so I send her regrets. And I don't know, Bob, I've got a request from Susan Carol Berg Caldwell to say her thank yous to the commissioners, so I don't know when is a good time.
That's fine. Yeah, you can tell
Do that now? Okay. So Carol Berg Caldwell said she wouldn't be able to be here tonight, but she wanted to give a special thanks to the commissioners who are leaving us. She says, Commissioners Miller and Manning, she says, thank you so much for your service, specifically for the courtesy, respect, and dignity you expressed for citizens' input and public comment. She also offered a special thank you to you, Commissioner Miller, for your knowledge of the bylaws, protocols, and procedures. She was impressed by your depth of knowledge. So that's what I have.
Thank you. So now we have public comment, and I'll move the turn meeting over to our Vice Chair Tamara for the last public comment.
Okay.
I was about to say that all night long.
I have Majeska C. Screen signed up to speak. If there's anybody else in the audience who would like to speak, please fill out a blue form and hand it to me. You'll have 3 minutes.
Well, first of all, I second those things that Carol sent in her message by way of let's see, a couple things, mostly in the form of questions. When the chief gives his report, I noticed the very last thing in on the slides is the current upcoming issues, the River Keepers River Station proposal. I hope you'll give an update on that. as well as the Parks Ambassador Pilot Program, which I guess is taking place. I wanted to especially ask the chief if he could address something that's coming up with City Council. And I guess it's appropriate for me to ask questions here that I don't know if the chief has to answer them, but maybe somebody else can ask it for me if necessary. It's about the issue of smoking downtown. I watched on the webcast the City Council work session about it. And I know people like Councilor Clark were raising the issue of the burden on law enforcement and the court, and that there's more important things for police to be dealing with. And then City Manager Reese said something about, well, it won't be the police, it's the whole community justice, the whole community justice system. We're looking at that whole system. And I didn't get what else he said. And then the mayor said something about, we're looking at other ways besides enforcement. I just want to say that. And then Sarah Maderi, I guess she was there as the assistant city manager, said it's not going to be a law enforcement burden. So what I'm wondering is, so this sounds like it's not necessarily going to be something that the police are doing citations around, but there could be some other way that it's dealt with. And I wonder if you could tell us a little about that. I wonder if it's going to have something to do with the upcoming community court stuff. I wonder if it has to do with the coordinated private security agencies downtown, or if it has something to do with the reporting system with the CopLogic application. And I know that for some people it's a public health issue, but I just wonder, it seems like there might be something else in the works about it besides the public health issue, particularly since the city manager, in responding to Councilor Clark, mentioned that it has to do with the whole community justice system, looking at that whole system. And how do things end up in court if there weren't citations for them? I think it's kind of just kind of a curious state of affairs that I don't know how the community is going to get more information about these particular things, and if the city council will even, maybe the city councilors already know more about this than the public does. It sounded like the mayor knew something that others didn't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a latecomer here. Was it your intention to speak tonight?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you.
That
Always
concludes our
like to
public
give the
report.
opportunity.
Yes, thank
you. Okay, thank you, Tamara, for that for us. So, in regards to the comments, I would let the chief decide whether he wants to respond to that during his time on comments. The next item is commissioner comments and responses. So, as typical, I'll take a volunteer. If not, we'll start somewhere. Mike?
First of all, I want to clarify that my no vote was for letting you leave, not for recognizing you. We should do that quite a bit, but not the first one. We shouldn't let you leave. Secondly, I agree with Majeska. I didn't understand a lot of that. Now I know council hasn't passed anything, and the answer is no. Council doesn't really know anything at all in this thing other than what Greg has proposed and what I think several councilors would like to see happen, but certainly there hasn't been, any kind of decision making yet. So it's hard to answer the question about enforcement when there isn't really a rule yet. And I recognize that too, but I was particularly puzzled by some of those responses myself, and I wouldn't mind knowing what you know in terms of intentionality. Other than that, today's a celebration for me. I just took my last test this morning, so I've been gone a lot to go to school and whatnot. Turns out I get to wear a funny hat and a dress on Monday, so I'm done with that. Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess we're moving around. First off, it's as usual, as always, it's always nice to be here with everyone. I walk away from here a lot smarter than I was before I walked in, with all the knowledge that's being shared. I do want to offer just a couple of things, and what was just the public testimony given by Majeska and your response to that. I'm not fully aware of all of the internal workings or the motivation behind that, but I do believe that it doesn't make sense to make laws that don't make sense, laws or ordinance or codes that really don't make sense. You know, we've started to develop ourselves into a culture, a nation of total restrictions, and we're starting to infringe upon everybody's civil liberties and stuff. You know, when you say that you can't smoke on this side of the street and you can't smoke in that cardboard box or whatever case, because now you're talking about people that sell this product, and we have individual choices. I'm not a smoker, but I believe that people that do smoke, some need help, and it's up to them whether or not they're going to give it up and seek the help. But to have design codes and ordinance and stuff and ask our law enforcement to go out and tag people for that, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I do want to offer one other thing, and this was a response to, there were a couple of issues or a couple of events that occurred yesterday, the day before, where we had large response units out and stuff. One was until one of our SWAT team officers and stuff went to visit his children and stuff, which is as parents do and stuff. The only issue was that he was dressed in his SWAT attire. I had, you know, as I'd mentioned before, the uniforms and stuff that have been distributed by a lot of police departments that have the Army combat uniform pattern and stuff were designed for warfare, not for urban environments and stuff. When we look at these camouflage patterns and stuff, they were designed for jungle warfare and stuff to help soldiers blend into the environment, not for the city. The coolest uniforms for SWATs that came out were the black or the dark blues. There was no mistaking what they're about. Chances are we may have this incident again, unfortunately, because people are really paranoid now. They turn on the TV and the first thing you see is the events that's over in Iraq and Iran, and you see these uniforms, you see these type uniforms and stuff. So I would ask that we kind of really look at that and stuff, and because of the visual impact that it plays upon our citizens. And it costs a lot of money for our units to respond like that and then find out that it wasn't for that. But the fear that it presents is real. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got to agree with Commissioner Manning on both of those topics, the smoking and the SWAT uniforms. I want to introduce a 5 3/4-year-old Fletcher over here.
Hi, Fletcher.
Hey, Fletcher. How you doing,
Who
man?
was lucky enough to get to come to the meeting with me tonight. I might end up having to leave early, and I fully anticipate having to leave early because of that. So I want to thank James and Tamara now. Cannot emphasize enough how important you both are to the Police Commission. One topic I wanted to bring up is University of Oregon students, when they're contacted by the police, are regularly being asked, or anybody who appears to potentially be a University of Oregon student is being asked whether they are. One person denied it, felt that he had extra repercussions for that denial. I see this if any other large employer in town, Peace Health, whoever, told the police, we would like you to tell us every time one of our employees is contacted by you and report that to us. I don't see it as any different. The University of Oregon is taking great pains to become a private institution. That's what they've really worked to be. That's what they are. That's how they should be treated. I don't think that it's okay. These are public records. The U of O can reach out and see who was arrested, who was cited on any given day. There doesn't have to be this complicity between the EPD and the UO, Dean of Students.
Thank you, Jessica. Bill?
I want to thank Jessica for her comments again. They're I always enjoy what she has to say and make me think a lot about what's going on in the city. Thank you. I attended the police award ceremony last month, and what a wonderful example of the work the men and women of our department do every day. That's just a wonderful, and again, I recommend that to every commissioner to attend that next year. It's just a great job that they do out there. And the incident that happened at the YMCA, reminds me of a couple years ago. I was driving down Coburg Road, and there was a man walking down the street with a sidearm. It was on his lower leg, kind of like the gunslinger, but I know. And it was odd to me. He was walking down, he had camel pants, but just like a tan top. And I was like, why is that guy walking down the street carrying a sidearm like that? No identification on him, nothing that told what he was. So as I kept driving down the road, kind of thinking, should I call somebody, should I do something? I see the SWAT van parked at a restaurant about a block away, and then I look and I see 3 other guys kind of following him down the street. They were all just going to get a drink at the gas station there. But it reminded me that, I agree with Commissioner Manning that I think I'd like us to look at, is it necessary for them to wear something that isn't blue or black that we have traditionally associated with our police department and how we see them on the street, unless they are truly working in plain clothes as that job requires. So I would just like that to be something to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to let you all know I will not be here at our July 9th meeting. It is my mother's 90th birthday.
Happy birthday, Mom.
We all know that a good son will make the trip all the way to the Canadian border to be with Mom at her barbecue. I've asked other human rights commissioners if they'd be willing to come and sit in and observe. I understand they obviously wouldn't have a vote, but at least they could report back to the commission on what took place on the 9th. This is just a personal experience that I and my wife had today that I want to share with everybody in the room. If you use Facebook to sign into a website, you often are given that option. You may not remember your password for that website, so sign in with Facebook. If someone has your Facebook password, they can go onto those sites as you, buy whatever they like with the credit card attached to that site, say Amazon, without ever knowing your credit card information, which is how $3,000 disappeared out of our bank account between noon and 2 o'clock this afternoon, leaving my wife in Indiana with a dead debit card. So we're pretty excited, and just wanted to share our excitement with everybody else. So just be aware of that. Deans of students kind of have a long history of, how shall I put this, dabbling in the lives of their students. Just again, as a personal experience, my dean of students back in 1969 decided he didn't like my anti-war message on campus and notified my draft board that he was throwing me out of college and I was eligible to go to Vietnam. Personal letter from him to them. Nice. There is that tendency to want to run the lives of the students for the benefit of the image of the university, and I think that that's apparently a problem that has not gone away in all that time. The YMCA incident. First, sorry that happened. Just a thought about how to get around that and what you're talking about, seeing somebody walking down the road in their camos, but no other ID. Got some blue traffic vests that say Eugene Police SWAT on them. Wear them when you're not sneaking up on people. That's the cheapest thing I could think of. SWAT, big letters. At least they know what they're looking at. And that's enough for me, I think.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to congratulate Mike, for going back to college. You're in good company. Steven Spielberg actually went back to college after he had been in the Forbes 400 list for quite some time. Just decided it was something to do, and so you're in good company.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'll piggyback on that. Mike, congratulations. Can't say how, it's just impressive to go back. I mean, it's hard enough to do it when you're coming right out of high school, but to go back later on.
As an old man, yeah.
Well, I didn't want to put it that way. But I have a feeling I'm older than you, so maybe I get away with that. Majeska, thank you for the comments. I think they're both right on point. I know a lot of people have spoken about it, so I don't need to weigh in too much, but I do kind of lean toward what everybody's been saying is Smoking is kind of the smoking ban is kind of questionable. I know it's just in the forming stages, so who knows how it'll pan out. So it's probably too early, but it's probably not too early to at least get some comments in about it.
It'll pass.
I'm sure Mike will get his comments in. He'll represent us well. And I don't smoke either, so, but I do agree that there are some rights issues there. And as far as the uniforms, I actually didn't see the story. I went to bed a little later, and but my wife told me about it, and she was kind of laughing. Hey, you know what happened? Oh, great! But that is too bad to end up spending all the resources. I'm sure the chief is not feeling too thrilled about it either. So, but I do agree. Something when you're on duty and you're not actually in the performance of trying to bring somebody down as a SWAT person, to have some kind of identification that does say who you are, I think that would be good. I also wanted to thank Tamara and James for their time on the commission. It's been great working with you. I'm going to miss the cheeps coming from James' phone and getting blamed for them. And Tamara I've known for quite a while. Yep, many years. A lot of times out, her watching her husband and I play softball, and that's how we got to meet Tamara and Jason. Was Darla and I. Darla would come out and watch me play, and a lot of times they'd be the only two spouses or girlfriends on the bench watching. So they, even though we were on opposite teams, they just kind of sit together and watch us play. And I also want to thank the chief for allowing Lieutenant Klinko to come to the credit union today to do a robbery presentation for all the branches. So thank you for that. I understand it went really, really well. So thank you.
So to answer, apparently, a concern around the table here, I know every time something comes up and it's fresh in your mind, it's like, oh, that thing, we got to deal with that. I remember James bringing that up at the retreat. It's in our top 10, James. I think it's number 6. So it will get discussed, even though you won't be here to hear it. We will bring that topic. Uniform appearance was one of the issues on retreat. So we'll look at the policies and take a look and see what you all think about it. So keep that in mind. I also attended the award ceremony. Bill, I'm sorry I didn't see you there. I guess such a crowd, and that was a good thing because there was a lot to be said about all the different awards and the people that were getting them. And to me, this is the story. We have a lot of people who work very hard and do things and save people's lives, and that's expected anymore. That's just what's expected. So when things go awry and have aberrations that don't exactly look good, it's just easier for us to get the wrong perspective. And I'm glad that they have these events so that we can, and I agree with Bill, maybe more of us could attend next year at the next session so that we can show our support for these good men and women. There's nothing else that I have other than to thank everybody again for coming out on a beautiful summer night. It's almost summer. It seems like summer. It sure has this past week. But I was going to save my remarks about Tamara and James until the farewell comments, so I'll do that. Thank you very much, George.
You're going to skip.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
No, you're out, Nick. You're
He
late
does that.
Boy, he misses you already.
If you're the vice chair, you might have to poke him a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. But, yeah, the smoky, even though that's not something for the commission, it is an interesting thing about city ordinances and how they involve the police as if there's not enough work for them to do. Smoking's changed a lot in the last 20 or 30 years and what society thinks of it. So that'll be an interesting discussion to watch go through the city council. In regard to the uniforms, I have a little bit different take on that situation. I thought it was great that I think it was a FedEx driver called that in, because I think that there's probably been incidents that have happened in the past where someone thought, oh, that's probably just, and then it ended up being something big. So I thought it was great that we have members of the public that are that aware that are concerned when they see things that don't seem to fit and they're willing to call it in. That doesn't happen in every community. So I think that's a good thing. Thanks.
Well, would you want to?
No, I'm sorry, I just happened to see George sit back there like he was ready to talk, and my mind went right to right around.
The downtown smoking ordinance was brought to us by Councilor Evans, I think. Lane County Public Health did a study of smoking downtown, and they've seen other, or they've also, I think they contracted with a firm that did the study and also has looked at other communities that's had bans in places like our downtown. And in some places, it was rolled out well, and there was a very high level of compliance in the beginning, and which has been sustained. In some places, it wasn't rolled out as well, and it became a big mess, and they've retracted or they've suspended the ordinance until they can find a different approach. So apparently, a lot has to do with how we communicate about it. If we go this route, how we would communicate about it, and who would have what responsibilities. In the scan that was done downtown, apparently using scientific methods, they were able to identify where smoking happens. And they also learned that it's not homeless people who are smoking, it's employees that work downtown who are smoking. How they know the difference between an employee and a homeless person, I don't know. But that's the assessment that they have. And if that's true, if the people who are smoking are employees who work there, gaining compliance probably won't require much enforcement. But the ordinance could mandate all kinds of variations on how enforcement is done. Could require a warning first, for instance, or have to give police officers the same discretion that we have in every other area of criminal law now. So it's really, really the question is, does the council want to see some form of a ban? If they do, what would they like it to look like, and how would they expect it to be enforced? And those decisions would determine what the effect on police time would be. But if the psychology is that 9 out of 10 smokers downtown are employees, I think compliance could be, we could get to compliance very quickly. And that's the little that I know about it right now. Has council received a presentation on it?
Councilor Evans asked for a work session on his idea that he would like to propose an ordinance like that. Other people jumped on board, and then two things happened. One, his presentation seemed to be enhanced and supported by Lane County Public Health folks who were there, as well as the city manager announced that he was going to, by virtue of his right, by fiat, do this in city parks and just make the decision to do that. Now, I don't know that the council is going to have a lot to do with that decision unless we decide, or one of us decides to dispute that. I personally think it's a horrible idea, but that's a whole other discussion, so I won't bother. But it will come back to council at some point in the near future, probably in ordinance form for us to have another discussion about before it goes to a public hearing or discussion.
Yeah, I don't think that's been scheduled. So, and then on the parks, I've heard a little bit of the discussion on the parks idea, and trying to decide what parks, whether it's all or some or one, or I don't know where that will go. And then how that relates to the community justice system, I don't really know. And then the approach we want to take to to the municipal court system, which we're now calling the community justice system. The approach we want to take to that is one where we look for as many exit ramps for people who are introduced to our criminal justice system as we possibly can. So rather than go directly from contact with a police officer to sentencing, directly from one point to the other, we instead are looking for appropriate avenues to reduce the likelihood that the behavior will be repeated. So that's what that might have been about. And then with the uniforms, using military uniforms for SWAT teams dates back a long time. And I remember when we were thinking about the appropriate uniforms in the 1980s, it had nothing to do with a fear of militarization of police. That just wasn't a concern at the time. It had everything to do with what is going to provide the greatest protection for the police officer, the greatest concealment for the police officer. And all black uniforms were known at the time anyway, back when I thought about things like this. All black or all dark blue uniforms were known to be more visible than camouflage uniforms. And a great deal of science has been applied to the American military BDU, which provides a great deal of concealment, and that's how we ended up where we are now. And it's really in the last year, maybe 5 years, that there's been a growing interest in the militarization of police, growing concern with that, which we really haven't taken very seriously because it hasn't been that much of an issue here in Eugene until yesterday morning. And so, it's a wake-up call. And since Ferguson, we've learned a lot about the relationship between police and the community that they work in. And our appearance matters, and Commissioner Manning has brought that to our attention a couple of times. And so we have recently started to talk about our vernacular. Where does that sound more military than civilian? And things like our SWAT team uniforms. And I think Lieutenant Klinko did an outstanding job talking with the press yesterday about the incident, and he also made the comment that that this will be a catalyst for that conversation, and we'll get to decisions much more quickly than we would have if it hadn't happened. Your story is great from Coburn Road. I'll share that with these guys so that they aren't tempted to think that this is an isolated problem. Let's see. Oh, and the UVO students, asking for ID on UVO students. The difference between that and an employer, I think, is that we don't really have many employers that have so many people that so persistently commit crimes that disrupt public order. I don't know of a business that does that, Maybe bars, and they get, people who go to bars and go out and commit crimes of disorderly conduct. We do everything we can to figure out what bar they came from. So if we have bars that are problematic, we just have, about 5,000 students living in the West University neighborhood, and they have done a lot of damage over the years. And so this is a way, tying them to the university is a lawful way to do a better job of holding them accountable to that really unfortunate and unhealthy behavior. So I get your concern, and of course, it's an imperfect approach. It is a lawful one, and it is more effective than not doing it.
All of that makes sense.
Until some smart person like Jesse disagrees, and then we're working. Everybody goes,
Can I ask a question of that stuff with the chief?
A follow-up from what he said?
Yeah.
Certainly.
The issue near the YMCA, I know that the proximity to the school made that a higher concern incident. Help me understand this. We are or are not an open carry state or
Yeah, we are
municipality.
an open carry state.
I would think so too. So why would the mere presence of someone having a gun, since it's legal to do that, create that level of response? I mean, from a policy perspective.
Well, I'm glad the response was totally appropriate because, the report we got was a person in camouflage gear wearing a firearm near a school.
Yeah, I'm not saying I disagree. I'm trying to figure out the triggering mechanism because I know plenty of folks who want to make a political statement about the fact that, open carry is completely legal. There's something dangerous about that. And so with law-abiding citizens without any, ill intent. So it's possible at some point someone may want to do that to make the political statement. I'm just wondering what triggers the response of lawful conduct.
Yeah. I would disagree with you. Open carry is lawful. It's not normal. We look out around, you walk around Eugene, it is not normal to see somebody wandering around with a visible firearm. It's
Okay.
not normal. That frightens people because it's not normal. And, so, but the active shooter, the active killer episodes that have happened in the United States have been people who've had guns, visible rifles or pistols when they go into schools. So someone with an open carry gun on the school grounds, that is a frightening situation. We should be very concerned about it.
Okay.
The other thing is, that I forgot to mention is that Joe Kidd was wearing his SWAT uniform, which has EPD patches on both shoulders. I don't know if they're subdued though, and I think he has a badge on the shirt. Most of them have a badge on it, which is also subdued. And a normal person would drive by and not notice those things. So I think what happens is, like a lot of professions, we walk around looking like this and completely forget what effect that it can have on people around us.
Okay, George, you haven't spoken yet. Everybody has got, we'll have to go around again, we can certainly do that. Go ahead, George.
First of all, I don't know how we got on the smoking ban in here, I suppose because of the police department, but we need more rules and regulations like we need a hole in the head. I'm not a smoker. Smoking stinks, but I will not go as far. And I will be a criminal soon because I store my yard debris on the sidewalk in front of my house at the end of the sidewalk, so I could be a criminal for doing that. More rules and regulations, isn't that what brought down Rome? Yeah.
I don't think so.
The Citizens Review Board had a interesting case. A good-hearted officer put a mental hold on somebody, and it turned around and bit him, and there's a lawsuit because of it, or as I understand, there may be, instead of arresting the person for reckless driving. And it's real. It was a most upsetting case because the officer did a good deed. He got the driver off the road, and being nice, did it in the wrong form, which turned around to bite him. And it was really a heart-wrenching for me to know this guy being nice created a problem, which is real concerning. It was the most difficult case. We also had Lisa, is it Barong? Mm-hmm. Came in, talked about cahoots. And one of the things I love about, all the organizations is learning about the local government and what they have. They have a budget of about a little over $500,000, run 2 vans from 11 to 3 a.m., 2 vans, or they stagger them. One starts on at 3 and runs. But anyway, we have 2 vans over 12 hours a day on the streets. It is a contract services, the police department. It's not the police employees, but they train them. And one of them is an EMT. The other one has mental health training. It is an incredible, 7 days a week, incredible organization, and it frees up time of, one of the reasons it frees up the policeman's time to be able to do other calls, because if cahoots is not available, then the police needs to respond to it, and they are done through the dispatch center. So I was really impressed with the cahoots, and hopefully I'll get they won't let as many people ride along with the cahoots, but I really want to ride along with the cahoots van and see what they do. That's my report.
Thanks for that. Interesting. Yeah, we're going to go around again, I guess, with other folks. Go ahead. Question?
Well, no, I just, I forgot to say something, and that is, so I have already witnessed one incident of a heat stroke of a unhoused person yesterday when I was driving home from work. And so I just wanted to say that if you're one of the people that's inclined to carry something to hand out to folks that are standing on the corner, I don't give money, but I'll give like a little care package, Ziploc bag full of stuff. If you're grabbing water for yourself, if you grab an extra water, you could, be helping someone by giving them some water in the hot weather when we have that. Thanks.
That's good. Thank you very much. Joe? Edward, you had something you wanted to say? Keep in mind, please, all of us, we're in the next segment of our agenda item, so.
And with that in mind, I think I can pass on these conversations and just move the agenda forward.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention, I have 12 employees, and it seems lately I've had teaching of what I call thinking errors, people making mistakes. And then I multiply that, I don't know what, there's something like 50,000 police officers in the country, 50, 60,000. Anyway, to be able to, unfortunately, I'm glad my stuff doesn't go public, it's not that big of a deal, but it would be very difficult to be under the crosshairs of the press in making mistakes. Anyway, it just must be real tough when I have, with 12 employees, thinking errors going on that are not life and death, that don't have to be instantly done. So my hat's off to how many, as I said, I think it's 50 to 60,000 police officers, how little press they get.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is review of the minutes, so anybody have any corrections that they saw? Edward?
Just a couple. Regarding my commendation for Officer, is it Kaiser?
Kaiser?
K-E-Y-S-E-R, Kaiser? No, I didn't say good customer service, because that's a concept in policing I'm not very fond of. Well, citizens aren't customers. What I believe I said was good community policing, and that it was, and I would like the minutes to reflect that.
Okay. Thank you.
Flipping over to Citizens Filming Officer Policy Review, my comments are the bottom paragraph. I'm not completely sure those concerns that I brought were from Mr. Kinnison, who's the city staffer attached to the HRC. I believe those were strictly from Commissioner Carrasco.
Okay.
So I don't want to get Mike in trouble.
Anybody have any other corrections?
Other than that, they look good, Jeremy.
On page one, under Commissioner comments, the sentence that starts, Mr. Rhodey is glad for the public comment in months past. I think that's P-A-S-T instead of P-A-S-S-E-D.
Oh.
That one's gone.
Okay, with those corrections being made by Jeremy, are there any other? If not, I'll have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second. Seconded by George. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved and minutes are approved. Thank you very much. We're moving right along into, the next item on the agenda is the review of the bylaws, and you all were provided with that in your packet, so if you want to look for that now, we can talk about that. This kind of sets the stage for my apology, because last year in June, we did not have elections. I went back and looked and slipped my mind, I guess. I took over midterm of another chairman, and I guess I didn't think about it. And we were supposed to have elections last year. So I apologize to the commissioners for not upholding the bylaws here, and I hope we don't do that again. I'll certainly have, be more careful in the future with making sure we stick to that policy. So the way it worked before, and Jeremy, maybe you want to review this for us, since you did most of the research on this.
Yeah.
Or Tamara, that's right, you actually did more too.
So I'm one of the ones that wanted this on the agenda. I asked Bob to put this on the agenda. I had a hand in changing the terms of the leadership a couple of years ago as an experiment. You didn't get the full bylaws, but previous to a couple of years ago, the chair and vice chair used to serve for 2-year terms with a two-term limit. So you could serve a total of 4 years in leadership, either as the chair or the vice chair. Another commissioner who's no longer on the commission had proposed that we try a year, and then had proposed a shorter term limit, and I proposed 3 years to help with some continuity. So I just thought, before we have the election again, and we've done the experiment for a couple of years now, my perspective is that a year goes by really fast, and there's not a lot of continuity in leadership if you're changing leadership every year. But certainly, on the other hand, you want to give anyone on the commission who wants to be in a leadership role the chance to be in a leadership role and serve in that role. And that would be the advantage of having shorter terms. For my personal view, I think it's easier to match up the terms, the 2-year terms with our work plan so that you have the chair or vice chair reporting to council on some regular basis and having that experience. Some people might not be nervous to go in front of the city council. I don't think it's necessarily a fun experience, even though I've done it many times, every time I'm nervous.
Those guys are rough.
Yeah, well, last year, some years they're rough and some years they're not. Depends on who's on the council, really, frankly. There have been some rough years, actually. So anyway, I just thought it would be a good discussion point for this group to have to say, here's the pros and cons of having it a year or 2 years, and revisit that before we have the election. So Jeremy, do you have anything to add? Because you did some additional research on that.
No, I think you covered it. It was, it just seemed like if we were going to discuss this, it made sense to do it before you guys held the elections later on today, so.
Thank you, Tim, and Jeremy both for doing the research on this, and I just wanted to put it out there for the commissioners to decide if you want to take action or if you don't want to take action. So George, go ahead.
I have a question. With my term expires, I asked for a renewal, and so I guess I don't know, my fate is somewhere else. So that, because I don't know whether...
Citizens Review Board, you mean?
Is it the citizen? Okay, I guess I'm getting them confused. That's right, never mind.
Well, if you are renewed on there, then you continue to serve here as long as you're the liaison, so.
Right.
That does depend on whether or not your tenure is renewed there.
Is it the same day, June 22nd, as our appointment?
I don't think that's been discussed. It should be, I assume it is, but I've never gotten one that says yes, so.
Okay,
Mike says yes.
all the same. Okay, so, James, go ahead.
Regarding, this is pretty interesting. It does, I think that Tamara had pointed out some excellent points about that. There may be others that may be interested in a leadership position as well. One of my positions that I serve as a chair of the State Advocacy Commission is that we vote every year for chair and vice chair stuff. Most of the time when you have someone that's willing to accept that leadership position, very rarely or anybody else want to challenge it and stuff, But I think that they would have to have the opportunity and then be up to the body as how to move forward. So I would be in favor, and I would ask that you consider 1-year terms. It doesn't mean that the person is going to be bound by a 1-year term. You just go ahead and revigorate yourself, and then it could be that person that's in that position may want to do something different too. So a 1-year term, which means that if you want to continue on when it comes back up again, you can put yourself back in there and everybody's fine with that. Or if you were like, okay, I want to get out of this, but I have to commit to this 2 years, so I'm kind of stuck. So I got to ride it out. So I think that this body would want to consider that 1-year term and allow everybody to chime in who may want to and stuff, and leave it up to the body to make the right decision and stuff. I think we got some brilliant people at this table. They can come up with some excellent things, and maybe you throw somebody out under the bus and stuff, Jesse?
It's kind of your night, man.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, James. I have Edward, then Jim. Does anybody else want to speak? Okay, Edward.
I just have a procedural question. If we make changes to the bylaws, is that just something we can do here, or is this something that council has to weigh in on?
The bylaws are ours.
Thank you.
With a couple of exceptions.
Right.
They can't go against something that is in a city ordinance. So there are some things that are almost verbatim of what come out of the ordinance, and they're identical, so we can't change those things.
So this would be vetted by the city attorney then?
No, this isn't in the ordinance. The terms that the chair and vice chair serve are not in the city ordinance that created the commission.
And I did
Things like
research
how
that
many
before
members.
this discussion.
Yeah.
So this is something that you can decide as a body here.
Thank you.
Yeah, things like how many members sit on the commission and where they come from, that's the ordinance, yeah.
Correct.
And you probably can't get a lifetime appointment, so, you know.
Jim?
Yeah.
In your research, Jeremy, or Tamara, I'm not sure who Jeremy did the research, what are the other commissions in town, or maybe what other cities are doing? What are they doing as far as term limits? Did you check with any of them?
I did. I called our city manager's office. There's a position that works and coordinates with many of these groups, and the answer is they're all different. So it's kind of up to this body what they want to do for this particular.
There wasn't anyone in particular that kind of had more that kind of weighed toward 1 year, 2 years, or?
No, I guess what they found is they've had discussions of trying to standardize, but every time they try to standardize, they find that each group
Has their own
finds
ideas.
Yes.
What does Edward, what does the HRC do?
HRC reelects officers annually, and I'm in the same position that George is. I sit here because I'm an HRC commissioner, and that is renewed on the first of each year, not the middle of the year when new commissioners come on board.
So do you know what the CRB does as far as their leadership?
The CRB is the same as you guys. The whole system for Eugene is July 1st is when they make the new appointments.
No, but how, as far as their
Every
chair
year.
or vice chair goes, how long do they serve?
I think they're doing 2 years.
2 years.
2 years?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tamara.
And I'm just raising this as an issue for your consideration because I did have a hand in changing it, and because many, or some of you were not on the commission at that time, and I thought it would be a good thing for you all to have weigh in on before we have the election. Thanks.
Thank you. So far, the only opinion I've heard is James saying, keep it as it is, 1 year with three-term limit, and that's it. I'm not hearing any changes. Go ahead, Mike.
What he said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Agreed. I'm not seeing any consensus for changing it, so we can move on. And thank you very much for your input, and that was an excellent job you guys did. in finding
Want a
this out.
clarification? Want a clarification?
Sure.
What I'm seeing here says, what was it again?
It's
We're doing 1 year
Here's the actual
with 3 years.
bylaws.
Three-year term limit.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, 1 year with 3 one-term.
Limits,
Got it.
yeah.
You would have to elect them 3 times for
Right.
a 1-year term each
Right.
time, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, yeah, it still
Okay.
provides that you'd have to do that every year. And again, that's what we're
Yep.
doing. Okay? Seems like that item was easy enough to get through. Now we have civil disturbances policy review. 801, it's in your packet. Another relevant topic for today with what's going on in other parts of the country and how the police are responding to such disturbances and the gamut from one end to the other. So I guess we need to start by having Sergeant Lowen, are you available for that?
Just in
now?
time.
Yes, thank you.
Timing's everything. You know what the secret to great comedy is, don't you? What? The secret to great comedy?
Being
Timing. Well, there's always that.
You want to just kind of walk us through, it seems like it's got 5 pages of procedure here, so.
You're talking about civil disturbances, right?
Right, 801-3.
Yeah, so it's not material to this discussion, but I'll just kind of give you the backstory. So some of the policies you're seeing now are these old general order format things. And one of the things, we've been updating all of our policy material from these general orders into the new policy format and language that y'all have seen most recently, like when I bring you drafts of our department material that we're bringing to you in this new format. It makes more sense, it's vetted, a lot of these things have updates and legal decisions that affect them. And so, I got asked earlier, and it makes perfect sense, people were probably expecting maybe a newer formatted version of civil disturbances. And I'll simply offer that the reason we don't have that for you is to maybe have some of the discussion get teased out from this meeting. And there are several general orders that are referenced in here that would probably do well all lumped together in one policy that governs these things, where we're going to try to protect people's. They're going to revolve around the same type of event where we have these like First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment issues. So we could, in theory, we could have something that just dealt with large-scale incidents, and that included labor strikes, civil disturbances, lawful gatherings, where we're asked to police, if we decide that we want to have policy material that governs those things. And in the last about 2 years that I've been doing this job, we've been working on, bigger picture piece, our use of force and vehicle pursuits, things like that. It's not to say civil disturbances isn't important, but so I'm hoping that I can take away some of these notes, and then maybe we'll be able to come back in a follow-on subsequent meeting to have a policy that's in a format that you guys maybe recognize a little better. But y'all have read this, I'm sure, so I'll go through and just quickly give you a couple of walk you through it from my perspective. We've got down past the definition. I think that's kind of our best way of sorting out. We're not going to treat every large scale gathering as a civil disturbance, even if it isn't permitted. So we kind of put these kind of caveats on what defines a disturbance. So it'd be helpful if you evaluated that for what makes sense in the community. You'll see some of the reasonable restrictions under the subsection E that may or may not need to be highlighted in the policy here or not. One relevant statute that didn't make its way into here and under the specific situations is 4.727, which is disrupting city council meetings, which is unlawful and jailable. So we would add that if we were going to include some statutes that are relative to some of these things.
What is it? What was that again? 4.1?
4.727 in the municipal code is disruption of council meetings. It's got a very legalese definition, but basically what it means is intentionally disrupting the work of the council. It's been on the books since I think I looked October 11th of '71. And basically they've defined what is the city council work, and it's like when they're in a group trying to discuss and hear testimony but I could pull it up and show it to you. I could take the break and grab it if you're curious. Beyond that, there's a lot of there's some procedure baked into this procedurally, which makes sense because again, I've said it before, these low frequency yet high liability events, sometimes it helps to have some of that procedural stuff in there. So I, as a supervisor who hasn't dealt with a civil disturbance ever or in 10 years, I can take a quick look at the policy, assuming I have that time available, take a quick look and see. I would submit that the entire Part 2, subsection B could probably be shortened to, the department's efforts will, always begin with containment and dialogue, and then as the situation progresses or evolves, based on the totality of the circumstances, we'll increase our, our use of force or dealing with the crowd in that way. That's just kind of like my rambling 2 cents on that, but I'm sure you could come up with some language that we don't have to go through this kind of use of force continuum type thing in this document. Everybody knows when deadly force is, police officers know when deadly force is authorized. We don't need to belabor this. And finally, that mass arrest and deactivation stuff, that's stuff that could probably fit into another section, or if we had this major incidents policy that lumped all these kind of events together, that could be under more of an incident command system type policy, or almost into a procedural type thing. I would submit it could probably get struck. The use of police canines in there, I don't know if anybody's even keyed on that, but it's, I think it's important in terms of, not so much as, our canine officers know we're not going to deploy a canine in a situation like this, but I think this is one of those things where our policy manual is reviewed by people who aren't police officers, and understanding that that's not a tactic that we're going to use is maybe helpful for the community to understand. So that's in there basically kind of as an affirmation to the community, not as a, but maybe it is a reminder to patrol sergeants and supervisors, but no canine sergeant or no canine handler in EPD is going to, they're well trained enough to where they're not going to deploy a canine in that situation. Okay, I've rambled long enough, so I'll happy to answer your questions or take notes.
Okay, first, is Mike, who's after that?
I have what will sound like an odd question, but I promise it's actually a serious question. Part 1, C3, disruption of lawful assemblies. There's nothing in here about disruption of unlawful assemblies. And it's a serious question. We had an incident in our community where a number of people contacted me wanting to interact with interrupting an unlawful assembly. And I counseled that we not, but thought about it. Should that be a part of this policy?
Gosh. Well,
sorry.
Go ahead. No.
I don't know if it's helpful if I were better educated about what an unlawful assembly was versus a lawful assembly. Perhaps.
Yeah, I understand that. There have been, I'm trying to think of,
I'll be specific. I don't have any problem with that. We had people in the Wayne Morse Plaza for a very long period of time who were violating city ordinance in the process willfully, and that was part of what they wanted to do. I had folks say, well, but I want to protest in that plaza, and I can't because there's a bunch of tents in there, so let's go move them. I got a right to protest there too. Would those people have been violating the law to do so?
That's a chief question, sounds like.
yeah, that's not a sergeant type question. That's a chief question.
More strict. Could be, and then maybe I just insert myself in here too.
And I don't know if it's helpful to define that sort of response, because it's, well.
Yeah, we're going to arrest people for disorderly conduct if they disrupt the crowd like that in a way that creates fear, frightens people. So that wouldn't be helpful. The police department wouldn't appreciate that.
Okay.
And you'll notice that this was written in May of 2001. And since that time, there's just been a world of lessons that have been learned about crowd management in law enforcement. And we have 3 different types of civil disobedience that are pretty typical in Eugene, and they come and go. But in 1991 and in 2003, we had quite a few large-scale political protests on the Federal Plaza with people who were unhappy with the efforts of United States war efforts in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so we dealt with, there's an approach to that that involves knowing who the organizers are, doing everything we can to make sure we're being helpful with them and giving them advice about how to remain legal, how to exercise their free speech lawfully without disrupting traffic and so on. And then we also put our crisis negotiators among the protesters in uniform, soft uniform, talking with them, looking very closely at where things might get out of hand. There were counter protesters there, and so we helped the federal police manage all that. So that's one type of protest we have. Another is like these sleeps protests. In fact, in today's social media era, it's pretty unusual for a protest to happen where we don't know about it at the same time that they announce that they're going to have a protest. And so, we do one of these with every single one, and if it looks like one where the police might be needed, we connect with the protest organizers early on. We work with them, and we figure out a way for the protesters, like the one you mentioned in the Free Speech Plaza, for them to make their point and for us to enforce the law, without being ridiculous. And so, you can't, it doesn't make sense anymore, and it certainly doesn't in this town, to say on day one, nope, there's 100 people that have been in the plaza in violation of the law, we're going to arrest all 100 of them. That just is pointless anymore. It's not a good use of our resources. It's picking a fist fight when it's absolutely not necessary. And we know we can work to a peaceful resolution where not a single arrest needs to happen. Nobody gets hurt. Nobody gets sued. None of them, So we've found elegant ways to get to a good place that doesn't please everybody, but it's considered pretty smart policing today. And then the third kind of thing that we run into is the drunken student riots in the West University neighborhood. And that brings there's no pre-planning there's no work with organizers in advance of those things because they're not organized. They sort of occur typically they occur when we shut down a number of parties in close proximity to one another, and there's 150 or 200 inebriated students in the middle of an intersection, and they just get nutty. I don't think we've had one, Sergeant Lowen, for a few years now, right?
I think probably 2008
Okay.
was the last time I can remember an actual deployment where we were.
Yeah, 2008 was the last time we deployed the whole crowd control team, but since then we've had a couple a year, except for the last 2 or 3 years, with smaller groups of people and that kind of thing. So the other thing I wanted to add is that since Ferguson, a lot of departments have taken these and completely rewritten them. And Madison, Wisconsin, for instance, has a civil disturbance policy they're pretty proud of. They call it the Madison Way. So you're going to want to read that one, I think, and I'm sure Sergeant Wong can get it for us. And IACP probably has new policies as well.
And, if I can, the distinction between lawful and unlawful demonstrations and private persons infringing on those rights, we won't make an arrest for the crime of infringing on someone's right. We're going to make an arrest for, criminal acts, whether they're disorderly conduct or they're coercion or, any of the number of criminal acts that could be perpetrated on a group of people trying to lawfully assemble by private persons, not government types, but private persons trying to keep them from, having that opportunity available to them. So lawful, unlawful, it doesn't matter. If there's a crime committed, we're going to make an arrest or inject ourselves at that point.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a queue start. I have Edward, myself, Tamara, and James. Edward?
Recognizing, as you pointed out, that part of the purpose of some of the language in here is to reassure the public. So there are things you've talked about consolidating or getting rid of that I actually think you should leave in for that purpose. It gets everybody on the same page. And with that in mind, I think adding in the definition of unlawful assembly would answer a question that a lot of people would have. Is what I'm planning going to be an unlawful assembly? Something I don't see mentioned in here, but that, for a little background. The chief's familiar with some of this, I've mentioned some of this to you, but in the late 60s and early 70s, I would have been one of the people in these assemblies, dealing mostly with the Seattle Police and the Washington State Patrol, and mostly anti-war and Native American fishing rights, so on and so forth. We organized peaceful demonstrations. We often, after the first few mistakes, would work with police commanders. I mean, we had our own protocol as well, which is find the leaders of the police and work with them to keep this nonviolent and orderly and so on and so forth. Eventually, I took some of those skills to work, literally to work, and managed security and combined police and civilian operations for huge special events, mostly in San Francisco. So there were instances where we would be taking T-shirt volunteer monitors to trainings that are jointly put on by the event organizers and the police department about how to keep things orderly and who to report to if you're seeing something that's building within the group that's not something the group necessarily wants. So I've seen this from both sides. There's a lot in here that is, I know it works, I've seen it work, especially the business about finding who are the leaders in the group and setting up lines of communication. That you can't skip that step. So there's some very good stuff in here, I think. But what I don't see is increasingly knowing what a group is doing and who all they are calling to help them is something you'll find on social media. And I think there ought to be a section in here that kind of defines how you're going to handle that. That was tremendously useful in 2001 in San Francisco. And there were people monitoring the social media feeds in real time for the police department and saying, okay, there's reports of people with Molotov cocktails in the crowd who are not part of the organized event. These are the violent splinter groups seeking to hijack the event for their own purposes, turn something nonviolent to violent. So identifying that there are splinter groups that are not involved with the people you've been talking to about this nice peaceful event is, I think, really important. Some departments have enough money to actually train their officers against faux crowds. Other officers usually playing the roles of demonstrators. Does EPD have the resources for that? And your scenarios that you use, because I think it's really useful, and I've seen in some departments, to actually go to groups that are organizing these kinds of peaceful events and ask them to help with that training. No, they don't actually go play the part of the protesters, but they might help you evolve scenarios. So just a thought about that. Nope, I think that's it, except tear gas and less than lethal devices coordinated and controlled, and I have written in the margins, wind, question mark, because I have seen that play out badly. And it's something that often people don't think about how much of a panic a cloud of tear gas or even smoke blowing into a crowd of peaceful people can engender. I think that's it.
I think there's a policy that probably should be related on use of tear gas.
It's in our 308, handcuffs, control holds, and impact weapons they discuss.
I did have one other. In your deactivation number 4, D4 on page 5, request assistance from Public Works is needed to repair damage to city property and/or for cleanup. I know that, Oakland, California right now is trying out a new demonstration policy in the wake of yet another trashing of small businesses up and down Broadway. And one of the things that the business owners asked the mayor for the most was, could you please call the emergency number that's on the front of my business after my picture window gets smashed so I can send somebody down to fix it? So that might be something you want to think about just in terms of taking care of the security of the businesses that might no longer be protected from casual looting. There's somebody walking by 3 hours after the riot, if there's not some plywood over that window, there's more thefts. That's all I got.
Thank you, Edward. And but myself, Tamara, James, and Bill, Q. So I have a question on policies, section C2, trespassing, subsection A. It talks about relying on property owners and agents to make citizens arrest. Am I seeing this, that if the owner doesn't arrest a person, makes a citizen's arrest, the police aren't involved, or am I seeing it as should this state that they should make a complaint first before making an arrest on private property, or how is this?
Yeah, I mean, the term citizen's arrest is, I mean, it's kind of a vague, personally, I've never seen that. It's,
I can answer it.
yeah, go ahead, sir.
He was looking
No,
at you to
you
see how you're
stumped me
gonna
on
answer.
it.
He was
It was a
looking.
valiant effort, though, brother. It was.
He's just gonna
I
speak.
can see the look on Chief's face,
Yeah.
yeah.
Got a
He
little
was-
panicky there.
Well, this is exactly what happened in the Free Speech Plaza. The county administrator was asked to actually appear in person with the protesters and tell the protesters, you have to leave. They refused, and then the county administrator said, well, you're under arrest. We effected the arrest, but the county administrator made the arrest. So if it were on the university's property, and we've had that experience, it's the same thing. If it's at Walmart, it would be the same thing.
Okay, that answers that question. That brings me to the second part, B, which I'm going to make a suggestion here, and that is, it's simply unwieldy and probably impossible to find a city attorney at 3 in the morning when you've got a riot going on. Why are we not trying to find out what the law, even though it changes, courts make new law every day, so it does change, but why are we not attempting to provide in the policy a guideline as to what you can do on a mall, even though a mall is private property, it's open to the public. If they say they want somebody trespassed, though, the police come and they arrest them, I know that. So we know why aren't we, instead of saying check with the city attorney, providing guidelines as to what areas the police can and cannot make arrests in?
I don't know the specific answer to that question. I think it's possible this revision or this policy came on the heels of some of this controversial events that Eugene was going through about this time in 2001. That I can only speculate here. It doesn't firm anything. If I'm a supervisor and I'm reading this right now, I'm still just as clueless as I was moments ago. So I would probably just be checking with what's makes common sense at this point. So I don't know. The chief probably knows a little better than I do, but my guess is this just came on the heels of some sort of controversial issue about private or public property.
Yeah, I don't think at the time this was written that the law was clear about where we could forbid people to be. The other thing that'll happen is that we'll order a crowd to disperse in the West University neighborhood, and we'll set up a line of officers and move down the street, and they'll step off into the front yards. And then we have to decide, well, can we go on a front yard? Somebody, they're just as riotous in the front yard as they were when they were between the curbs. And that's another thing, another time where it's something challenging for us, and we'll call the city attorney for advice. But it's a good question for Matt to write down and see if we can get better clarity.
Just a suggestion that we do that so that the officers and the public needs to know what's the law as far as if I'm on a mall and I want to make a protest and the mall security comes by and says you have to leave the property. Is it open to the public? Now, wait a minute, does that change what the law says you can and can't do for a legal protest? I don't know. I mean, the plaza, as mentioned before, was one of those areas where, and we have people who are both involved in emotional issues today that are felt very strongly about. And there's a duty and a responsibility for the police to keep the protesters and the counter-protesters from attacking each other. And one of them is, maybe you've seen these people from the Westboro Baptist Church, I think, that come to funerals, and they've got counter-protesters now that are showing up. So, they want to kick them out of there, but also the police have to be kind of neutral as the policy states. So I think it's important that we get some guidelines on that for everybody involved in dealing with this. Other than that, that's the only comment I had. Edward, I will get to you again, but we got to go around first. So Tamara, you were next, James, Bill, and then Edward.
I was just wondering if there was a policy on this in the Lexipol.
I don't recall there being one. I did look some time ago, but I can't remember. I think I don't think there is. My memory says there's not. I'll double check again. I can even run up on the break and find out for you. But I don't believe that there is. There is kind of what I talked about earlier, like just a large scale events type policy, but there's nothing that specifically deals with civil disturbances or riots.
Okay. I know this is just our first pass at this, my last pass, but I think it would be good to have, this is obviously a policy that we're reviewing it for a reason. It needs to be updated. 15 years old, kind of old and things have changed. So it'd be good to have some other things for the group to look at, or for you to suggest other language.
Okay, we have James and then Bill and then back over.
Bad signal.
Well, a couple things. First, let me apologize for, I guess that's one up, my last one, reference to Jim, no merge. Still got time maybe for another. I cut my phone off, so it won't happen again. I apologize for that. I think that the way the policy is, that it's a good idea because based on a timeline, and I think the chief said it perfectly, because of recent events and stuff and recent current and repeated events and stuff that's been publicized, it's always a good idea to look at what policies that you have in place in order to deal with civil disobedience, large group gatherings and things like that. I do appreciate the chief and his leadership. He's chosen a leadership style as one of de-escalation and stuff, communicating and making preparations to work with people to ensure that everybody's safe. And that stands for the officers that are involved as well, because, again, we have to consider the officers that are out there on the street. We don't want them injured at all. And I appreciate that Jim had mentioned about the person that comes to actually take advantage and disrupt. I would also ask that we continue on looking at this particular policy to make sure it is relevant to today, and keep in mind that this should be a working document, that this is one that maybe want to be considered as an annual review because of how things change, attitudes change, political views and stuff, which become a part of that, and then the equipment that the officers have and stuff. The ability to get with to collect intelligence and stuff is the most important thing, which the chief has pointed out. Being willing to go and talk to some of these organizers and stuff. I would challenge the officers, which are great here. I think we've got arguably the best police department in the United States. I would challenge the officers to go out and become part of the community, do a little different things, go out and play baseball with some of the kids and stuff, There was this one video that I saw where these officers, I forget what city it was, this is a big city, they came out and next thing you know, they're in uniform, next thing you know, they're playing basketball on the basketball court and stuff, When people see that the officers are human like they are, then that's a perception that they take and they grasp hold of that. They appreciate that. I think that our department is moving in that direction, and I want to commend you all, from the leadership all the way down to the newest recruit stuff, which has some big shoes. I will also challenge our officers that if you're in a position where you're experiencing some type of financial or the mental or emotional type of thing, to bring that to the supervisor. I would ask that the supervisor not chastise that person, but allow that person a little time to get collection and get their thoughts together, so that we don't have the super cop that we saw down in Texas that did the barrel roll on his way to cracking some heads on some 14-year-old pool goers and stuff. Those things are free. Those things are real. You can get caught up in the heat of the moment. I have been in the officer's shoes before because I'm a former police officer, and I know how the adrenaline can get to pumping. Sometimes we have to allow them the opportunity to pull back and take a breather and stuff, and understand without fear of any kind of repercussion.
Well said.
Bill?
I'll start out with when I read this, last week or over the weekend, I struggled with what questions, because I had lots of them about and recommendations, because it's an old policy. And the one thing I felt is that the way the chief handles these sort of things now, with his de-escalation, with working with them, I didn't feel it reflected in this policy. And so I guess I say all that because I really think, and I know it's hard, Matt, to start from scratch, but I almost think that I would like to just see you and the chief put together what your thought process is and how to handle civil disturbances today than it was, because it's been different than 5 years ago. I mean, you've said that yourself, you've learned a lot. And so to me, I really struggled with having this. I think everybody brings up good points about how this needs to be changed, but I think it really needs to be written under the philosophy of what our department is today.
Good point.
Okay, I got Edward, well, Bill, Jim, did you want to go?
Look, I know I haven't
Edward?
spoken yet.
Go ahead.
I like what Bill just said about evolving a descriptive policy from the practices you're already using, which are working well enough to keep you from being sued and out of the national press, which is a lot of departments can't say that. So while this is a prescriptive policy, and once you've written down a new one, it'll be prescriptive too, I like the idea of sort of capturing the good stuff you're already doing and putting it down in a way that the public can look at that and be very transparent about it. Some departments deal with this evolving situation by creating a very sketchy framework and then making very specific work orders for types of demonstrations, community events, that there might be some. I used to run security for Cinco de Mayo in San Francisco. A lot of people come there, get drunk, and are very stupid, and we arrested them by their hundreds. Others we just escorted to the edge of the perimeter and said, let us never see you again today. So tailoring those work orders to the specific situation made more sense than we will always follow this procedure. The work orders were within the procedure, but they gave it a lot more flexibility. And if, for instance, there were identifiable community leaders that might be good spokespeople for talking to a crowd with a police bullhorn, that was written right into the work orders. There were a number of years where in San Francisco, there'd be a 100-page work order come out from the SFPD for, say, the 4th of July or something. And paragraph 482 says there will be no arrests in the crowd without at least a lieutenant and Edward Gehring or this other guy present. And they would sometimes come and drag me several blocks on some captain's order so I could stand there and talk to the crowd. And that was a great policy, but you couldn't actually write that down in so many words. You'd have to find another descriptive fashion. There's a question raised about malls and other private property that look like a place of assembly. I have to tell you, as a facility manager in this, Oregon has really different laws than Washington and California. Nope, they're private property. And you'll see some instances where, like Bank of America Tower in San Francisco has a beautiful ornate brick plaza out in front of it that goes to the street curb, and a painted line to distinguish between the public right-of-way and what belongs to the Bank of America. And it's just different rules, flat out. If a mall says you can't put a picket sign at our front door, you can't put a picket sign at their front door. If you want to move 20 feet into the public right-of-way, it's not the mall's business anymore. So I think, unless there's some huge change in Oregon law from those standards, I think that would probably answer that question. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I went to Edward before I asked anybody else. Joe, George, or Jesse, did you all have anything? Oh, Jim? Okay, go ahead.
I did like Matt's idea of combining multiple kind of policies that are out there that all kind of deal with mass groups. It seems like that would be much easier to handle those in one policy than have them separated all throughout. So I think a lot of the procedures and policies would be pretty similar in handling each of those situations. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like they would be. I know that the chief mentioned, and I can't remember what city or jurisdiction you were speaking about, that had a pretty good policy that you suggested
Well, I haven't read it. They think it's a
They think it's good, but it could be
It
something
probably is.
that's worth, that could be a good framework, because I agree with what Bill had to say, that this is probably almost needs to be blown up and rewritten again, but having something as a framework like that, I mean, they think it's good, but it could be good, and it could be something that could be easily modified for Eugene and how things are done here. Something to start with anyway, some kind of framework, but I know, I agree, it kind of needs to be blown up and start over from scratch. The other thing I know, when James was talking about, seeing the police out there, shooting baskets and getting involved with the community and like that, I thought of the flip side of that. I could also see people in our community looking at that and saying, why are we wasting resources on police playing basketball and not out there on patrol and enforcing? So I thought of the flip side when, as soon as James saw it, I could see we're going to have the other side of the community come in saying that's a waste of resources to do that. On one side, I agree, it's good to get it out in the community and visit with people. I know that's something that's been discussed in the past at this table. It's difficult to do that because the resources are so limited. To have somebody out in the community and doing things like that, great idea, but I can also see the flip side. And just be prepared that that's what's going to happen too. We've got both sides looking at it, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest they go out and play basketball.
No, but that was just one thing, but you said go out and do some of those things. But,
In the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Can't win, thank you.
Yeah, I know, it is.
Okay, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that's sort of come up in my thinking has been covered by what other people have said. Just the title itself, civil disturbances, may not be appropriate because a lot of this stuff is, fully legal protest or other events, that kind of thing. And I think civil disturbances has a negative connotation to it, and maybe we don't want to add that right at the beginning of the policy. But again, I do, as Mike brought up earlier, this whole question of what constitutes an unlawful assembly, because we do have, First Amendment rights. As I remember, it says, Congress shall make no law, bunch of stuff, and then, or of the people to peaceably assemble. So, that's, what constitutes an unlawful assembly?
So, thank you, Joe. And, I was thinking the title on this, it sounded like an oxymoron with the civil and disturbance. Which is it? Is it civil or is it a disturbance? We may want to say civilian disturbances or
Check with
something
military
like that,
intelligence.
or just disturbances, because it is kind of confusing. So I'm getting a sense from the commission that what we'd like to see is more information, maybe possibly what else is out there, some sample policies from that. He's going to look for that for us and provide it for our next meeting. And we'll continue this again because it's very important. What I observed lately, for instance, in Baltimore, was administration that has nothing to do with the police or even the higher ups in government saying, give these people room, let them do what they got to do. And so the destruction and whatever happened after that is not necessarily on police. I suspect a lot of these decisions will be made well above that level, and we see that even here. So what has to happen is there has to be a specific policy that the police can know what to do when they're told to do it, because that's what it amounts to. You do what you're told, and we're going to work on that and try to come up with a consensus here. Thank you, Matt, for your time and for doing it.
And
okay,
something like this will definitely, city attorney plays a large role, or a large, depending upon the policy, a varying role, but this would certainly be one where they want to be very plugged in as to what our definitions are, what our procedures look like, how we're defining it.
okay, we're right on time for our break.
James wants to say something.
No, we'll do the break.
Oh,
Good,
okay.
thank you.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Be back at 10:15 and continue our agenda. Thank you.
It sounded like the superhero alert. Quick, we need James.
No, that's the beam me out of here, Scotty. Isn't that the beam me out?
That's not our thing.
We'd be in trouble then.
Press the button.
First time I've been into flashcards.
I'm not guaranteeing that's the most recent one. It was in 1993, but that's what I generally thought. This place doesn't hold themselves out to the public.
Sure, sure. Interesting.
How's things?
But that's not a protest, that is a petition gathering.
So I'm thinking of things like Levi Strauss's private park. Yes, it's open to the public. It has really different rules for public parks. Could you hold a demonstration there because they opened it?
Yeah, this was petition gathering, and I think that there
That's
ended up
different.
being some,
That's different.
there's something with protests
Yeah.
later.
Be interested in-
That was just a quick
Yeah, fortunately,
query in Google Scholar.
it's mostly not my problem anymore. I really appreciate it.
So is she?
Yeah, I meant to bring
Here, they are unlawful for
Yeah, I realize that, yeah. A law for the,
No, I've never experienced
Andy had a deputy called Barney Wright, elected official, and Barney got into was going to Otis, was summoned.
See the guy at the drug house?
Yeah, so Otis said, well, he threw the same thing. He said, well, I thought he said, but there is such thing as citizen's arrest. So Otis said, oh, okay, so you're citizen's arrest.
no, I don't think it's that.
All the wisdom of the stranger.
No, she has one with her. She's been on one. She's been through some of the. I think what I'm saying is,
I just want to mention, I just want to record right now.
It would be very just.
Because our, my
I know, like, gosh, my wife would be for that, like, white person.
Enjoying the summer?
Except for that something the grief part. It's hard on my heart. I'm way behind on my yard work. I did last year. We have a lot more of that. Yes, that's hard on my heart thing too, except it wasn't this week.
36 days of the initial action.
Well, I was warned by friends in California. Oh, you're moving to a place with seasons.
Nice to meet you.
I spent too much time living in coastal cities. I don't really know about seasons.
New England has seasons separated, very well defined.
Kevin, right? That's right. I just washed my hands.
Honestly, James said it was his last.
So here we have wet and dry.
Last month, and I said, oh, I want to,
At least we don't have the
definitely want to go,
monsoon.
and I still have that opportunity. And I'm really glad that I have, I'm taking.
That's a pretty impressive rain.
Yeah, but you know,
To see this
400
perspective
inches.
is extremely.
Steady rain for weeks on end, and steady down for weeks on end.
The escalation.
I remember when I worked in Market, so I briefly had the music festival in the 70s, and I was literally brought there by the promoters who were from Washington State,
And so.
because they couldn't get locals to work in the rain. And they told me this over the phone. I said, how do they get anything done? I go down there, the first time it rains, I turn to my client, I go, they didn't mention the fact that bulldozers sink to their engine blocks in the road, that your chainsaw will die at the count of 3 because it sinks all the water into another one. Red goddamn hard hat you driven me. It had a rain gutter around it, right? Which meant you walk with a waterfall off the front of your bill. You didn't see where you were going. So everybody turned turn them around,
I don't know.
that just goes down the back of your neck. You just came to accept the fact that the minute you step outside of a structure, get about 3 steps, water will come pouring up out of your boots, and you are soaked to the skin. And you know what? We still have a deadline.
I don't know, you do. I know there's a board you're not on.
I'm swinging on you.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I remember when I took my bike trip and landed in Gatwick. They were on day number 57. So I just, bolted from England down to the continent. That was it. Now we had one more day of rain all summer. In Nice, it's actually an okay place to wander around in the rain.
I can believe that. It's warmer anyway.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, my family on one side is Scottish. So I've studied a lot of the history of the British Isles and the Empire. And boy, is it clear that the farther north you go in the British Isles, the worse the weather is, and the more bright, capable, inventive people left. With somewhere warmer, and set up shop.
You did, although Edinburgh and other places in Scotland have produced some very impressive scientists.
Fuck yeah! My favorite story about that spread of people fleeing Scotland. Born in Scotland, diplomat for Great Britain, sent to the court of the Sublime Porte, leader of Turkey in the 1800s. His negotiations are with the Prime Minister, this guy with a turban about this big, he never speaks. Not directly to the diplomat, that would be beneath his dignity. He writes notes and hands them to some functionary talks to the diplomat. And this goes on for days. We finally settled our business. And our good Scotsman, his tailcoat, is taking his leave of the Porte. Actually, the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister chases away the functionaries. They're good. Leave us alone. Don't say a word. He looks at the ambassador and says, the thickest Scottish accent you can imagine. It's a great pleasure to see someone again from the village of Kirkcaldy. Well, I remember you and your brothers running past the church. My father was the bellman of the church. Scots went into government service for I have to tell you. This guy had worked his way up to freaking Prime Minister. But he hadn't spoken in English for so many years. He was taking this as my father was
Yours was a wonderful idea. It really was.
That's really...
You had that right. That's a great idea.
Done for the year then, Mike.
Tiny country.
Did your part. There it is.
Did amazing things.
See, personally, I like to ask flamboyant questions just so everybody's real clear we got the right guy as chief instead of somebody like me, right?
No, but you do bring an interesting question. It's like,
That was actually a serious...
No, it is because, well, you know what, I had a lot of people at groups that I was in there like, so let's just go and let's cancel.
Can't tell you how many times I heard that. I can't tell you. So many.
The federal courthouse, water parking lot.
I actually said that too. I said, so, I mean, I was really, when it was first occurring, I got real. So can I come park my motorhome anytime I want?
Some people, if you see somebody else doing something, they got to do it too.
Well, no, it's not that. It's
Get a balloon and tender.
with me and with others that I was talking, it's equal treatment under the law, and they didn't think it was being treated equal. So it was, but the chief's answers, the chief's process, the chief's methods are much wiser than mine. They are much wiser than Jeremy. I could not do the work.
Well, we've seen the chiefs, take the other side of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't work out.
Well, not always. I get kind of black and white sometimes when I should be smarter than that, you know. But I don't know.
It's hard.
No counting, I guess. Heck, I don't know. I'm a graduate. I'm just going to go have some red wine here in a minute. Hell, everything will be better then.
So you're going to start your little one-man red wine riot, right? All you need is an intersection.
Do we have to send
Boy,
the
that's
party
just regular
patrol
thing.
over by your house tonight?
No, please don't do that. No, please don't do that. You know, unfortunately, it's just me tonight. I really thought about getting, having more fun. I got a buddy owns a boat out at Fern Ridge, and there's like 5 different guys that own bars around town. All have boats tied up in this one little place where it only costs like $40 a month to tie up your boat in a slip out on Fern Ridge. And there's this big park, campsites, and the fire pit and whatnot. And so there's like 5 or 6 buddies, and they all tie their boats up out there. And then, well, we occasionally misbehave on the weekends, but we go out in the middle of the lake, tie up, do that, right? And we call it the Redneck Yacht Club. And I designed a logo and had T-shirts made last year. So, yeah. So I was thinking about going out there tonight. I really was. I almost missed this meeting because I haven't had any time to unwind for about a year. So.
Here's what I know about yacht clubs.
Yeah.
I used to help manage the opening day of the yachting season in Seattle.
Well, we don't do that kind of yacht clubbing, really.
It was at a time when we recorded all of our two-way radio conversations as we're setting things up for events, and then we go through them afterwards and say, "You screwed up here. Let's not do that again."
Right.
So for years after, I would play this for the occasional client or new employee. Is you got a harbor master, you got a dock master, you got all sorts of yacht club board members out on different, and one big freaking huge super yacht. That's where all the board is partying. They tied up the channel for half an hour, right up to the time we're supposed to be starting, with a pressing problem.
I also recognize the address of the
They're booked all over this boat, and there's no white wine on board. And that was more important than 600 vessels. Or the fact that no one could find the groundskeeper who had the fuse for the starting cannon.
We occasionally have what we call the regatta roundup.
At least one year, the cannon did not go off. They never found the guy with the fuse. And at the last moment, the dockmaster comes running down from the yacht clubhouse. It just runs down the grass to the edge of the ship canal and shuts off both barrels of a shotgun.
The regatta rodeo is where we take the speedboats, and there's a lot of folks out there that are sailing really nice boats out there. No, we spin around them on purpose so we can swamp.
You do what to sailboats?
We go round them real fast, see if we can swamp them.
Where's this at?
Fern Ridge.
You don't have a sailboat out there.
I know, you should avoid us on the boat.
No, I've got the fuse to the cannon.
Well, we got potato guns allegedly, and
George, here's what I know about sailboats versus motorboats. Rope in the water is not a huge impediment to a sailboat.
Right.
It's a bit of a
There is no
problem.
ropes on there is no ropes on sailboats.
Yes.
That's the first thing you have to learn.
Lines.
So to get rid of those ropes on the sailboat you don't want, just toss them overboard.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, next thing on our agenda is the chief's report. So everybody pay attention here.
All right, I'll just quickly go through it here. On the activities, the one thing I'd point out on that is the Community Justice Advisory Committee. That's a work group basically within the city, working on a different approach, and I talked about that a little bit earlier, different approach to our municipal criminal justice system. And I can talk more about that if you like. Let's see. We had some news items. The motorcycle car crash on Coburg Road, you know, the remarkable thing about that is that when someone suffers a severe injury, could be life-threatening, then we'll call out the major crash investigations team. And someone turning left in front of a motorcycle is the most common thing. I'm telling you, your motorcyclist, that's what can get you, so hopefully you're prepared. And then the 17-year-old arrested in the armed robbery. I think what happened is he got home, somebody saw the news release and said, "Okay, Junior, was that you?" kind of thing. They thought it might
Or
have-
something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
Why do you have all this money?
And then some really smart patrol officers work. They noticed, they found this stolen property over on Figueroa. It was a really good piece of work. Detectives came out and gave them a hand, and very impressive. And then we've hired a new animal services supervisor. Jeremy will have to make sure to get her on a future agenda so she can introduce herself. We'll do that properly. And let's see, Safety Town is coming up. And then crime is pretty typical. It's nice when the crime is going down, which it has been so far this year. The 1 week report is, most recent 1 week report that you see here isn't as positive as the year so far has been. And the calls for service and for crimes and for services is all pretty typical. And then in the summer months, normally we see a drop-off of the West University, public drinking, the loud party stuff, and then an increase in problems in the park and some downtown. But those two things are happening at the same time because we have kind of an early summer season going on. So it's had us very busy. Let's see. And the Park Ambassador Pilot Program is something that the Parks Department, or Parks and Open Space is running. They've hired some temporary workers for this summer. Our officers have helped with the training. And then we're staffing up bike patrols in the park, and that'll run through the end of August. And that's about it. But I'm happy to answer questions
Okay,
about it.
questions? Jesse and James and Jim.
On the top dispatched crimes, like Walmart and the other grocery store type of places, there's a shoplift 3050 program, and then there's a separate category for theft. What's the difference between the two?
Sorry. I don't know why some are classified as thefts. You probably know better than I would.
Maybe vehicle, out of vehicles.
Could be thefts
instead
from
of-
vehicles, that's true, could be. Yeah, I don't know why that's on there, but we sure get a lot of them.
I would pickpocketing, shove.
Robbery. But yeah, it's the same places. Oh, thanks. I don't know if any of you are affected by allergies. My gosh, this season's been...
I think, yeah, George didn't have enough time. I think you're allergic to chocolate, George.
Me too, I'm building up a tolerance, so.
I'm affected by allergies. My wife has them horrible.
Yeah.
Sorry. interrupted you.
No, that's all. That's it.
And, okay, James was next, and then Jim.
Yeah, Chief, I was wondering on the chief's activity report, in particular the one that says the legislative meet Senate Bill 316 polygraph. Could you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah, I asked our local delegation to consider moving a change in the statute forward that would enable police departments to use a polygraph exam for pre-employment screening. And we had this, we arrested, one of our former officers was arrested for downloading child pornography and for videotaping in the men's room here. And we've been asking since 2004 for the legislature to allow us to polygraph applicants. Nearly every single state in the union, I think with just a few exceptions, allows it. And in fact, one of our former lieutenants, Ron Roberts, is now the police chief in Olympia, Washington, so he knows what the hiring practices are like here. He's intimately familiar with what they're like in Washington. He was subjected to a polygraph for his final screening as a police chief there. He says he wouldn't, there's no way, now that he's allowed, that he would hire somebody if they hadn't been through a polygraph exam. The way they use it is they'll bring, the candidates will answer the personal history questionnaire. And then before the polygraph, they go through that and make sure, they have said what they mean all the way through that. And then they run them through the polygraph to see if their polygraph answers agree with what they said previously. And he says what it does is people pre-screen out without going through the polygraph. And during that pre-polygraph interview, you get a pretty clear idea of whether the person's suited, I think the anticipation of that polygraph makes everybody a lot honester than they were. And then there's a chief here in Albany who he was an assistant chief, I think, in Mesa, Arizona, and he ran their HR section. And he says they had a rule not to use the polygraph to eliminate anybody. So there might have been the way the law was written in Arizona, but they'd use it in the same way that they do in Washington State. And he says it's just a very powerful instrument. Sorry. So we have this guy that we hired that, no background investigation alone, psychological exam would have revealed his secrets that even his family and life partner didn't know about him. The only thing that would have gotten us there, I think, is a polygraph exam. So the 316 is the Senate bill. It got past the Senate, and then the Judiciary Committee on the House has shot it down every time that we've tried to take it up there. There's one person, I think, on the committee that doesn't like polygraph. So we learned what all of his concerns are. We addressed them in the proposal, and I still didn't move it forward this year. But I'm not giving up. So next Tuesday afternoon, there's an informational hearing on the House Judiciary Committee, and that'll be the opportunity for us to make our case out of the hope that next year it'll stand a little more chance.
If you could let me know when that's going to be, because I would definitely appear up there with you on this, because this is one of the things, and you and I have talked about this, and I really appreciate your insight, your perspective on this, because at a national level, I have been working with others to advocate for, before hire, a psychological evaluation and a polygraph for all police applicants before hire, and then annual psych evaluation. We do that in the military all the time. You got your annual physical and stuff. It's a matter of being well. It's a matter of well-being. Once we have our professional officers in there and stuff, we want to make sure we take care of them properly. And in order to do that, then we have to provide different types of tools and stuff that will help them know that, hey, if you're having a problem, then we can address that without any repercussion, because we want you to be successful. And I applaud you and you're steadfast on this, because you have been firm with this for a long time. I know that. So I will be there with you to provide testimony from my experiences, and then not only that, is that what we're trying to do from a national perspective to get this done. I think that you're on the right side, Chief. I really applaud you for your efforts and stuff. This is fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm good too.
Thank you, Jim. I know there was something that was asked earlier, and I can't remember if it was James or Jesse. It seems like it was from that corner anyway. Asking about the, where is it? If I flip this page back here. Was the River Road or River, it's the River Keepers River Station proposal.
Yeah.
Or maybe.
Sometimes these drafts are populated by a couple of staff people who add things on there thinking that I should be talking about them. And I didn't catch this one.
Is that Jeremy?
The tail wags I'll leave it at that, 'cause I've only heard that this kicked around by email. I've only been in one meeting internally where we've talked about it, but not very seriously. So if it's gaining traction, I don't know anything about it. Someone else at the table here might know more about it. The Park Ambassador pilot program, on the other hand, being run by Parks and Open Space, I guess is doing well.
And you mentioned, well, in the report, there's 14 officers that are in the background phase. How many of those do you anticipate hiring
We hired 7.
out of those 14? So 7 out, well, they're in different sections, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, we just hired 7, and I think it is 14, and 9 of the backgrounds are on my desk right now, so I just need to read through them and see if I want to move any of them forward.
So 7 of those were out of that 14?
No, I think the 14
Is a
is
separate
the
pool.
next group, yeah.
Okay.
Next pool.
How many are needed?
We hired 7, so that leaves 9 or 10.
Okay. So hopefully 9 or 10 out of the 14, assuming that many can pass through the...
Yep,
okay.
we'll only take the very best. I'd rather go short.
Oh, well, yeah. You said you were going you might talk a little more about the community justice
I can.
advisory. Yeah, I would like to hear.
The last few years, we've seen that there's a bottleneck that occurs in municipal court. A lot of work goes in. The prosecutor's office tends to be the bottleneck because it's not staffed enough to handle the workload that comes in from the police department. And then because of changes that came about out of the economic downturn, Dan Barkovic left. He had a pretty smooth and efficient operation and some committed contractors that were doing work. It was a very affordable operation because I think of how much they were giving. And so that whole operation was changed, and I think the contractors we have now have a much more business-like approach to their work, which they should. And so they do the work they're hired to do. And I think most attorneys probably give more than they're paid for, but it's not as affordable as it used to be. So there's just no way to move the volume of work through the system the way we were. And the nice thing about these kinds of crises is that it forces organizations like ours to ask ourselves, are we doing what we should be doing here? I mean, I don't think I've shared this with you because it takes too much work to edit it in order for this presentation, but we have basically we look at the top 10 people arrested in the previous rolling 12 months. So every day there's a different rolling 12-month period, if that makes sense. And they're all street people. They're all people who are homeless and have severe mental health or drug and alcohol addiction, or all three, co-occurring conditions. And we're just cycling through our little criminal justice system here pretty ineffectively, and to care for them in a different way doesn't save us money, but it does create capacity for what our system was designed for. Our system was never designed to deal with people in extreme distress over and over and over, and so we're consuming police, municipal court, jail, emergency medical services, emergency room services, all that with this population that emergency services were never intended to address. So we're instead asking ourselves, since law enforcement is often the first contact with some of these folks, it's like the trespassers that you've described, we can introduce them to this criminal justice system and then start asking where can they be referred, effectively referred, so that they're less likely to commit this crime, but really so that we get them in a healthier, safer place.
So these are kind of like the off-ramps you were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
to keep them from getting that final endpoint.
That's the theory. How we get there, I don't know. And so many folks that are in those circumstances won't seek those off-ramps except for the leverage that the criminal justice system provides.
And one last question was about, there was a pretty big UMV spike, and I assume that's the 20th week of 2015. Do you have any idea what caused that? I mean, it was pretty noticeable.
UEMB?
UMV, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, If anybody ever can solve those mysteries, then it probably means somebody got out of jail or
And that's what I wondered, if you knew if it was, or a gang came through or somebody that was just going
tying
through.
these numbers to an individual or people is really hard.
Okay.
UEMD?
Unauthorized entry into a motor vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
So I have Jane, oh, I'm sorry, I lost my page here. Edward and then Tim, thank you.
Thank you.
On what you're just talking about the community justice system, I know some other cities have done exactly the same thing. San Francisco a few years ago identified like their top 25 frequent flyers for everything, and things are more expensive to do there, but they were costing the taxpayers over $100,000 a year, just these few people. So they did what you're suggesting, is how do we divert them out of this endless cycle? And apparently that worked well enough that they're now working on the second tier of frequent flyers.
Is that sending them to Oregon? Is that what?
Yes.
Greyhound therapy, it's frowned on partly because San Francisco has been the recipient of Greyhound therapy from all over the city for many, many decades, or all over the country for many decades. I notice welcoming parks for our Latino and Latina neighbors, and I know over at the HRC, we've heard some pretty awful incidents that families have had rocks thrown at them, told go back to your own country, so on and so forth. So I'm just wondering what this particular line item means for EPD.
I'm not going to have his name right, but there is a professor at the U of O who teaches in 3 p.m. program.
Can you explain that for everybody?
Public policy and management. And he has, I think, a 400-level class that's studying this very subject. And so they set up a reception area in the Plaza Latina, which is the market that on 6th, 7th Avenue. And as people came in, they would invite them to look at this modular park that they had, a fabricated park. It wasn't any real park, but it had all kinds of little blocks and structures and toys on it that people could move around to help them explain or illustrate what they'd like to see in a park.
Sure.
And then the college students that were there were also taking comments from the people that were working with the material to see what they'd like to see in a park. And I think the impetus was what we've learned about the fear that Latinos have in parks, because it is fairly common for people to look at them like they don't belong there, or to say things to them that make them feel like they don't belong there. It's kind of it's an interesting phenomenon.
Interesting's a word.
Yeah.
The other thing I was looking at, and this is just my old instincts as a facility manager, I see Eugene Library has a found contraband, 13 instances, and I don't see found contraband in any of our other high calls for service areas. So I am guessing this is petty dope dealers working the LTD Plaza are stashing their stuff in the book stacks?
Well, yeah, probably because they're city employees, they're more inclined to call the police to say that we found this thing, a syringe or what have you.
Yeah. And I've managed facilities that there are people who put what they have for sale in our facility and they basically commute to it when they have a customer, so that if the police shake them down on the street, they may have some cash, but they don't have anything. And a library would be a very handy place to do that, especially if you just pick a book that's your book and nobody else likes, and you put your stuff in that. They're very creative. So I'm just guessing that's what that was. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Tamara's next.
Oh, I just was wondering, I tried to research myself, but I didn't have time. Has there been any movement on the bill at the state legislature on filming place? Haven't seen anything really since April.
On what?
Citizens filming place.
I haven't seen anything on that either. The last thing I heard, I think we talked about it here, was that you can't interfere with police, and that videoing by itself did not constitute the crime of interfering with police officers.
I think it made it out of committee. I think I remember a vote of 7-2, but then I never saw it come up on the, there's so many bills.
The last version I saw was pretty vanilla, it was basically acknowledging that people are going to videotape police.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions for the chief? Okay. All right, then at this time, we'll go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is elections. And Jeremy, thank you again for researching the rules. Jeremy provided us an agenda item summary here of what the rules are, and again, reiterating how the term goes, and specifically for the commission this time. So at this time, because Tamara is rotating off, I'm going to turn the meeting over to her, since she can't run for any office, and we will let you conduct the nomination.
Okay. So we have both positions open for election, chair and vice chair. So I'd like to open the nominations for chair first. George?
Bob.
Bob's been nominated. Any other nominations?
Bob again.
I've already got that spot.
No other nominations? Okay, we don't need a second, right?
Thanks, sir.
I don't think we need a second for
No,
nominations.
not to the nomination, to close the nomination.
Right,
I
okay.
have a pen. Can I
Hearing no
borrow
other nominations,
Thank you.
have a motion to close nominations for chair.
So moved.
That mean I didn't write it.
And Joe second, did you second, Joe?
I will.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was, you must have been Edward.
You got nominated to second, didn't you?
Okay, all those in favor of closing nominations indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Motion carries unanimously. So at this time, Jeremy's distributed your voting form. Yes, go ahead.
Am I correct in understanding that this is our only candidate?
Yes?
I move that we elect by acclamation.
Okay. James, did you have a comment for?
Yeah, we're just going to do this first and not the vice chair added, because on the form that he
Oh, you
gave
wanna do them
out.
both?
Yeah,
Okay.
because they're both on the paper.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought we were getting separate ballots,
Yeah.
sorry.
We should do that.
Okay, so, that's okay. So if there's no objection.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. If there's no objection to closing the nominations for chair, then we'll accept by acclamation. Okay, nominations for vice chair are open. George?
Jim Carter.
James?
James.
Jesse?
And I'd like to nominate Bill.
So I'll go with the board.
Is there anybody who's been nominated that wishes to decline the nomination, which has happened before?
Now, Jesse, you don't know whether you're going to be on?
I know.
There's something about that. What did it say about that?
In the event that either one of us are not, Jesse and I are both up for reappointment.
Okay.
If we are not reappointed, then the vice chair will assume the duties of chair and finish out the term.
But if you're the chair and Jesse's the vice chair,
That's
then
true.
you'd have to have another election if neither one of you was here.
That's correct.
But that change, I don't,
But the
I think
policy
that'd be
policy
unusual.
speaks to that, and
Yeah.
that would happen the following meeting that we got together. If that does occur, then we'd hold another election the following meeting.
Okay, thank you.
okay, so I
Guess I
didn't hear
need your
anybody
phone.
that was nominated wanting to withdraw their name. Jim,
Jesse.
Jim, Jesse, and Bill. I wrote down James. Sorry, I keep thinking names today, formal names.
We could go.
James will probably decline the nomination. Just a guess. Okay, so Jim, Jesse, and Bill. Are there any other candidates someone would like to nominate, or do we have a motion to close the nominations?
I'd like to make a motion to close the nomination.
Second.
Mike second. Are there any objections to closing nominations? And then motion carries by acclamation. Okay, so we have Bob elected or nominated as chair, and Jim, Jesse, and Bill nominated for the position of vice chair.
You done voting?
Please write your name on your ballot.
Are you
It's a
done
public
voting?
record.
Yeah.
Can I borrow your pen?
Oh, you have to write your name
Yeah,
on it.
this is a public record.
We have to write it on a secret ballot?
Yeah, it has to
No,
be.
there
It can't
can't
be
be a
secret
secret
ballot. We used to do it that way until we figured out.
That's the double
Yeah,
super
yeah.
secret ballot, Mike.
nobody is gonna see it, but on the other hand, they have to have a record.
We have to be.
My sense of humor is like red
We don't
wine,
necessarily
old
announce it,
something,
but
it
it's
takes
available.
getting used to.
It gets mold on it.
Yeah.
Or turns to vinegar after a
Yeah,
little while.
it takes a little, effort to get used to.
Just count the votes.
It's just available for public record if people want to know.
Right. Okay. We'll talk about that. No problem. That's the meeting.
Please pass your ballots forward when you're completed.
Full of juice.
Can't accept your ballot if it's folded wrong.
Coming from a
No hanging chads on these ballots, please.
That has significant weight with me, I must say.
What does this say? Wait a second.
Yeah, I was, kind of commented on it.
It's okay. Okay, I don't mind, I just was like hoping I knew what the rules were.
Could we nominate one?
Huh?
Well, we nominate one for
Left to right or right to left, I mean, does it really make sense?
I withdraw my.
You got this way or you got
We
the
have
wrong
had
way.
at least one candidate that wanted to know who voted for them and against them. That's public record, so you need to ask.
You're right, I think
I
the first
personally
time.
would never want to know. Just-
Well, I remember.
Now, can you vote, you can't vote?
I can vote.
Okay.
I'm still on the commission.
Just checking.
What are you saying, George?
Yeah. Till July 1st.
You can help me.
Remember the first time, I thought we actually raised hands for who we were.
Oh, the first time I voted, we did it by secret ballot. It was kind of an odd situation before we realized, before public record law was really at the forefront of people's minds.
A mere 8 years ago.
Yeah, a mere 8 years ago, yes. That was secret
One of the
ballot.
first people to take advantage of the FOI and ask for my FBI record.
It's too late.
All right. Early 80s, late 70s.
Happy talk, happy talk. Okay.
If you have a tie, we have to have a vote off that one.
People with protest records.
Boy, did I regret that.
There might be two.
I don't do regrets. Ever. He said, boy, do I regret that. I said, I don't do regret.
I was like, well, if I
Ever.
don't have confidence.
It's actually not true. I have one day a year. I have my day of regret,
Two in a row.
where I'll think about the stuff I screwed up. And then, that's it.
Yeah, go ahead and we'll just announce the front runners unless you have.
Like that. That's fine.
So,
I think I can fit all my screws.
Attention, please.
Well, it's part of it.
so the Commissioner Whalen is the winner
For the vice chair.
for vice chair.
I thought maybe he was a write-in for chair. I'm just kidding.
Not everyone wrote down Commissioner Walker as chair-elect, so I don't know if,
It's majority.
I'm assuming the assumption is that he's going to get it, but
We need count, yeah, we need a count. It's the majority of the people who voted.
So
If
do
you
we
vote,
not have
we'll
a
have
Um,
one vote.
Of all the votes, if you have half or better, you're good.
Blake?
Just to double check.
Before we leave the meeting.
Yeah, good idea.
What do you want? Majority.
It's never a bad idea to double check.
Unless we work.
No, we need to, we're still counting.
Well, we got some things that.
We need verification of
We'll
votes.
see, on the 22nd, when you have
He's the independent auditor.
How many people? I plan to
I
attend.
always appreciate when someone double
Yeah.
checks my work.
So I plan to come down and listen in on some of the sessions.
Sometimes I make mistakes. so,
Yep.
yeah.
Not changing your mind on me, all right?
Okay, so
No,
the results are in,
now, so
Congratulations.
waiting,
and
Both of you.
what's going on with the sale.
You didn't withdraw, so it's too late now. Bill.
I didn't think it would go that way.
I gave you a chance.
Make any commitment right
I thank you all for
because I don't know which way.
your confidence in me. This will be my last year because it will be 3 years since I forgot last June to hold an election. This is the third year, starting the third year of my term, so when somebody else takes over, I think Bill would be an excellent person if he is going to serve as vice chair here. Makes sense to me, anyway. And I want to thank you all for a great year of working with this commission, because I came on here at a time when there was a lot of contention on the commission, and those of you who've been with me during that time know what I'm talking about. So I just love the fact that everybody respects everybody else's opinion here and understands where they're coming from when they say something. So nobody's jumping on anybody and having a bad time about it. And something that I might clarify too, in the last round here, we were talking about things that happened in other cities, unrest in Baltimore, and it may have been misconstrued what I said. I don't believe that politicians tell our police department what to do. I think what I meant to say, if I didn't say it clearly, was that politicians vote on whether or not they wish to take action in certain circumstances and whether or not they wish to enforce certain laws. So they have the ultimate decision about what they will or will not permit. So in that regard, I think it's a political decision when things happen in our city. And so, and maybe that's the way it should be, because they're elected officials, and if they decide what's best for the citizens, then that's fine.
Those politicians.
I hope we never get to the situation we saw in Baltimore where people were just allowed to do whatever they wanted to do, and that's what I was getting to. Hope that never happened. Again, thank you. We are about to move into a special portion of our program tonight, and that's a presentation of farewell for our two commissioners, James Manning and Tamara Miller, and thank them for their service that we've had here. We have a special presentation for you, and I think it'd be appropriate for the chief to do that this time.
Gladly.
And thank you for not showing any old pictures.
Well, there's still time.
Use of force training.
I have those pictures. There's time. I have Facebook and those pictures. Excellent.
Come on up, James.
Come on up to the front of the room.
Oh, it's time to get the cameras out, isn't it?
Same thing. We gotta get the pictures going.
My battery's down to 5%.
Yeah.
Take it quick. Sorry. I'll just read this. Mr. Manning, your work through the Eugene Police Commission has served the community honorably for 4.5 years. Your leadership and participation has been a great asset and will be missed. Because of the great work that you have accomplished through the Police Commission and for the Eugene Police Department, you are hereby awarded with the Eugene Police Department's Certificate of Appreciation. It's signed by me and Mayor Piercy. It has the department's coin on here. We'll pass this around if you don't mind.
Oh, do you have it?
Thank you very much.
6 years. And so we want to keep the record straight. It was 6 years.
We'll fix that.
Hey, thank you so much.
Good job, man.
All right.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Congratulations. Sorry about that. Thank you. And Tamara. Yes. And we have been through quite a bit, haven't we?
Oh.
The taser policy, that was fun. And everything in between.
Yep.
So, Ms. Miller, hopefully we have the years of service right on this. Your work through the Eugene Police Commission has served the community honorably for more than 8 years. Is that right? Yeah. Your additional efforts in helping the commission meet goals through agenda planning and facilitation in the capacity of chair or vice chair for more than 7 years of those is noteworthy. And it is, because I think it was 9 months on the, or maybe the 9 months is what I'm thinking of, because the policy for tasers.
Oh, no, that was 11.
Took more than
That was
the term
11
of
months.
pregnancy.
That's what
That
I
was
said.
it. Your leadership and participation has been a great asset and will be missed because of the great work that you have accomplished through the Police Commission and for the Eugene Police Department. You are awarded with the Eugene Police Department Certificate of Appreciation.
Could you move to
Thank
the
you.
witness?
Thanks, Jeremy. Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
Those pictures. Enjoy your free time now. You'll fill it with something else immediately, sure.
That's very
And
cool.
in addition to that, I'd like to add that my personal thanks to both of you for James, who has given me guidance from the very beginning and shown his support for me throughout the entire time when when we've had some tough times here, so I appreciate that, but especially for Tamara, who has helped me get the transition right into the chair's position, and helped me with the agendas, and with her experience, I've just been invaluable. I don't know what I'm gonna do without you during the next year, but I'm so thankful for the time that we spent together looking at what we had to do and getting our work plans done, because I'm not sure I could have done it without your help, so thank you. And after we have commissioner comments, we'll adjourn, and I've got some refreshments here for everybody if you'd like to partake. I hope you will. It's pretty good. Anyway, thank you again, and let's give them a round of applause. So we're in commissioner comments. Does anybody have anything they'd like to, James?
First, let me say that I really appreciate, with my deepest gratitude, the opportunity to serve on Police Commission. I think that this is one of the major organizations that connect our law enforcement agency with our community. And the time that's invested by everyone here has been nothing short of phenomenal. I've learned a lot, but I will ask that you continue on doing things not from a holistic perspective. In other words, as you make your recommendations and stuff, also bear in mind that the officers out there are also part of the community, and we have to kind of include them in as we try to design policies and that's going to impact the way that they actually work, that we make sure that they have the flexibility. And also, as the chief had put out, that more engagement with the community as he's reaching out to minority community members and things like that, to make the relationship with the police department one that everybody takes ownership of our police department, because after all, it is our police department, and we have to support our police department. I think the chief is doing all the right things. His selection and his criteria in order to be a member of this department is far above the rest, and I continue to support, and I will be around, and you've not seen the last of me.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. Who would like to go next? Bill?
I go next. I just want to thank both of you. I have learned a lot from you, Tamara. You always have great comments and questions during these sessions, and same with you, James. And I have taken on one of your quests that you brought up at this meeting about waving. Every time I see an officer on duty as I go by, and I've got my daughter doing the same thing, and it's a lot of fun because you do see smiles and you do see waves backs, and she really likes that whole, so we make sure we do that. So everybody, I think it's a great process and a great thing to do, and makes them, I think it makes officers feel like, you know, we are supporting them when they're out there doing that, so.
Thank you. Yes?
Oh, I just wanted to say, okay, I said I wasn't gonna cry when I, okay. You guys that have been on the commission with me know I'm a crier. It's been my honor to serve on this commission. It's been, I have learned something every meeting I've come to. It's been a challenge at sometimes, a lot of times, and I've enjoyed it many of the times, but I'm especially grateful that I got to close my time on the commission with this group. Sorry. You guys have made it a lot more pleasurable to do the work of the commission and the work for this community than some of the iterations of the police commission in the past, and you're doing such good work right now. It's hard to leave at this time. There have been times when I wanted to quit in the past, but that's not at the current time. You guys are doing great work, and you're doing the work in a way that's very meaningful and effective, and I know you'll continue doing that work. So it's great for me to be able to close my time with all of you. Thanks. Sorry, I'm just a big baby. Sorry. I'm the only girl at the table, so I get to cry.
Thank you. George?
Well, it's been a pleasure working with you both. I've learned a lot from you, and particularly you, Tamara. I know you're going to have all kinds of extra time, and as president of the Eugene Springfield Youth Orchestra, we're looking for board members. I'll look you up later.
Okay.
Wonderful organization, but it has been a delight, and James, I like how articulate you are, and sometimes you just get to the point so well. I appreciate that, and good leadership skills. Thank you both.
I'll go next.
Mike?
I have served on the Eugene Police Commission for 6.5 years now. And I have great appreciation for both of these people and their service. Tamara's right, there have been some meetings that were harder than others, and some bits of work that were harder than others. But these two have stuck it out through the chairs. Ms. Tamara has always been one of the fairest diplomatic persons with a gavel that I've participated with, and I've always appreciated that about you. And I have, every time I've been in a meeting with this fella next to me, learned something that I didn't know before, or a different way to think about something. I didn't think about it that way before, and I so appreciate that, and I appreciate the friendship of both of you, and we're going to miss you. So thank you for your service, and that's all I would say.
That's good. Thank you, Mike.
Well, I'll go next. Tamara and James, I've known Tamara for, like I said earlier, quite a few years. Thank you for all those years and all the time we've spent on the commission here. It's been great. James, great to get to meet you and your lovely wife sitting back there enjoying the last meeting. I know you will be very busy. I'm sure you'll fill this time with something else that will be just as important to the community. Thank you for your time, and I see you upgraded your ring on your phone to maybe a little more modern than the bird chirp, so that was great. It was a great going away tonight to hear that again.
Like the superhero.
Thank you both very much.
Jesse?
We haven't obviously always voted the same way. I'm trying to think how to say this. I had this idea a long time ago that America and the U.S., the world could run well if honorable people just did what they thought was right, whether they agreed or disagreed or not. And both of you are absolutely, like, the word served honorably, I realize what that means in thinking about how you've been here. No matter what, you're doing what you think is right.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.
Well said.
Edward?
Even when I disagree with you.
First of all, I agree with everything I've heard at the table about the both of you. I'll say again how much I appreciate the way that you and Bob work together to keep us on time and on point, and I wish there were a few other groups that I sit around tables with that could follow that example. And in fact, maybe what I have to say is you've kind of spoiled me, working with both of you in particular. Thank you for that.
Thank you, everybody. Anyone else? Well, then I'll call the meeting adjourned. We'll have some refreshments and go home. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone, for your participation again. So much appreciated.
I knew it was going to happen.
Oh, my God, that all day. Thank you, James.
Well, you were so delicate.
Not allowed. And you thought you might have I want you to I'm worried about that. You know about
Why didn't you cut such
Go ahead. It's not blue for us. Let me kill the camera. There you go. Good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Number one,